Scott, we've just had an interesting session talking about all sorts of things, particularly relationships, not only in the supply chain, but interesting talking about relationships with the whole life cycle in a sense, and all the parties, the design, concepts, the construction, the handover or lack of handover sometimes, and the issues. Would you like to expand on some of those issues about particularly the relationship aspects between the parties and why sometimes this is failing in this too?
I think it's probably one of the biggest challenges, particularly in the UAE, with a lot of development underway, that the relationship from design through construction to operations tends to be a silo type relationship, both on the client side and within the vendor supply chain. And I think there's certain moves and improvements taking place through the use of BIM technology, for example, or BIM tools, but also an understanding amongst large developers that they need to internally bridge the gaps between the development side of their business and the operations side of the business, and then how that filters down into the supply chain, the designers, the contractors, and the operators. And people are making some changes, and I think that needs to also then be reflected in changes to the contracts within the design consultants, the contractors, and the operators to try and bring bridge this gap and get a continuous flow, particularly of data. There's a lot of repetition of data by all the different professionals in the supply chain, which is wasting time, wasting money, and wasting energy. So I think there is change, but I think it's one of the biggest challenges that the whole industry needs to support and give advice to the clients, particularly on the FM side, construction side, and the consultants.
One of the points I made, which seemed to resonate with the audience, was the fact that facilities managers aren't stepping up to the mark, and it always seems to be left to other professionals or the client even to pave the way. But have you got a view on that about how can we get facilities managers to understand it's an important role and something that they should be fulfilling?
No, I think that's a very good point, and it's across a range of issues. It's across how do we manage stakeholder relationships. We can have an FM contract and it has a one-liner on managing relationships and stakeholders. That needs to be not only more clearly defined, but also the FMs have got to step up to the mark and actually provide a lot of interfaces and between the various stakeholders. It also relates to technology. I think the FMs, they've all got the CAFM systems, and to varying degrees of implementation. But there's a whole range of other technology applications, whether it's integration with ERP systems, CAFM and BMS, BIM and CAFM. And unfortunately, I don't think the FM industry has actually embraced that change or has the necessary skills.
Or influencing
and to influence decision making, but also add the value that is actually required. So there are a number of FM companies who understand this need for embracing technology and having the skills. And that also relates to things like energy management, improvements in waste management. Waste management costs are increasing significantly through the increase in landfill costs.
That begins to focus the attention.
Because the government wants recycling. Well, how are you going to manage the recycling process? It's not just leaving it to the waste management contractor. FMs have an important role to play there. The same with the energy management. Gone are the days where it's lip service to energy management. It's now a contractual requirement and a value add. But very few FM companies currently are picking up on these things and effectively dealing with it, including developing and acquiring the skills and technology to support those initiatives.
Yeah. There was another interesting topic that came up from the floor, which was about the relationship with procurement. So we had a little bit of a laugh about it, but there's a very serious issue there, isn't there, about the lack of clear specifications which procurers that don't understand the subject matter are procuring and then wonder why it fails in a year or two down the road.
And it's happening, it's across the board. It's at bid stage, when they're tendering for a job. And I think what the FMs have got to understand the quality of the contracts, the quality of the tender documents that are coming out, the definition of requirements, the requirements for thresholds, the requirements for taking total responsibility, are much more onerous, and then you've got penalty regimes associated with it as well. Now, there isn't enough involvement of procurement in the bid process. So, because of that omission, when you get into the operations stage, then you start living with the reality and the problems. Even within the operational stage, there are issues, particularly on variations, where there is inadequate information being provided by the FM site teams to the procurement department, who are really acting in an administrative function rather than a proper procurement function, and they tend to just look at it totally on a transactional basis. Go get 3 quotes, what's the lowest quote? Let's appoint them. Now, this is having a big impact with clients, because they're recognizing that the FM company's procurement is not up to speed, and in fact often the client's departments are better at it. So there needs to be a better quality of skill and methodology used in procurement by FMs, and a more partnering approach, not only with their supply chain, but also with the client internal procurement departments as well.
Yeah,
share knowledge, share experience, get agreed vendor lists, regularly update that, visit premises, see where you can use innovation, and all those kind of issues have got to be taken much more seriously at a procurement level. Otherwise, the clients will turn around and take that function away from the FMs.
Yeah, I think also we've seen it in corporate organisations where the objectives of different departments are not aligned. And for projects like this, you need complete alignment and understanding about what's trying to be achieved. So there's another lesson about relationships. All needs to come together.
And I think, within the relationships, the key issue is about, first of all, understanding expectations, and then managing those expectations. Now, I think often in a lot of poorly drafted contracts, the expectations are misaligned from day one. So the contractor thinks he's got to do this, and the client thinks he's getting that. Yeah. So I think that there needs to be more work done on defining those expectations of both parties in the tender and contract stage, but there should also be a continuous process and method by which you implement that process during the currency of the contract to actually change things. And you need to have flexible contracts because circumstances change. Particularly, we've got phasing of developments and different needs and requirements as you go along. But the relationship is critical. In FM, the legal terminology within the contract is secondary to the relationship. So therefore, you shouldn't spend all your time defining all the legal T's and C's. You should be spending the time on the relationship, the expectations and the objectives.
Yeah. Scott, thank you very much.